The Four Seasons sold over 100 million records and built a legacy that still echoes today. But behind the harmonies and the polished image, there was a story no one was supposed to uncover. Because while the world saw success, something else was happening in the shadows, a hidden debt, ties to people no one wanted to talk about, and a betrayal that would quietly change everything. When the truth finally came out, Frankie Valli made a decision that still doesn't make sense to this day. He chose to carry a crushing financial burden that wasn't even his, one that would follow him for years. So why did he do it? And what really happened behind the rise of the Four Seasons that the musical never told you? From Newark streets to a dream that wouldn't let go. Francesco Stephen Castelluccio was born on May 3, 1934, in Newark's First Ward. Growing up as the oldest of three boys in a crowded Italian neighborhood where life was vibrant but often rough. His father, Antonio, worked tirelessly, cutting hair by day and building display sets for Lionel model trains whenever he could, while his mother, Mary, balanced raising the family with a job at a beer company to help make ends meet. They lived in the Stephen Crane Village housing project, a place where trouble was never far away. As a young boy, Francesco brushed close to that world and was even arrested once for breaking and entering. Around him, people believed there were only a few ways out: the army, the streets, or something extraordinary. He chose to chase something bigger. That path began to take shape when he was just 7 years old. One night, his mother brought him to the Paramount Theater in Manhattan to see Frank Sinatra perform. It was his first live show, and it changed everything. Sitting in the audience, he watched Sinatra command the room with a presence that felt almost unreal. The lights, the sound, the energy, it all stayed with him long after the night ended. Even at that age, he knew what he wanted. That moment became the spark for a dream he would carry with him for the rest of his life. A dream that would eventually lead to worldwide fame and more than 100 million records sold. As he grew older, Francesco realized that if he wanted to make it, he needed a name that belonged on a stage. His life shifted when he met a country singer named Texas Jean Valli, one of the first people in the industry to truly believe in him. She helped him find auditions and opened doors he could not have reached alone. In return, he took inspiration from her name, experimenting with different versions before settling on Valli. It was an unusual choice at the time for a young male singer to adopt a name from a woman, but he kept it, because she had supported him when no one else did. By the age of 18, he had taken his first real step into the music world, joining Tommy DeVito's Variety Trio in 1951. A year later, he was fully committed to pursuing music. In 1953, he recorded his first single, My Mother's Eyes, released under the name Frankie Valli. The record made little impact, and success remained out of reach. To survive, he continued cutting hair in his father's barber shop on Madison Avenue between 1956 and 1958. Customers often remembered his father proudly showing off photos of his son performing in small venues, even as fame still seemed distant. The sound, the loyalty, and the debt that changed everything. As Frankie Valli fought his way up, he built his voice by studying everyone he could. He listened to jazz groups like the Four Freshmen and the Modernaires, absorbed R&B from the Drifters and the Clovers, and even learned from female jazz singers like Dinah Washington to shape his signature falsetto. Without formal training, he created a sound entirely his own, blending jazz, doo-wop, and soul into something no one else could replicate. By 1954, he had reunited with Tommy DeVito, forming a group that would evolve into the Four Lovers by 1956. But behind the music, trouble was growing. Tommy had fallen deep into gambling, building up mob debts of around $160,000, while secretly accumulating more than $500,000 in unpaid taxes. When the truth surfaced and repayment was demanded, Frankie made a decision that would define his life. He took responsibility for all of it. Out of loyalty to Tommy, who had once helped him, Frankie guaranteed the entire debt. That choice forced him into years of relentless touring, paying off money that was never his to begin with. At the same time, the group struggled to survive. After a minor hit in 1956, RCA dropped them, and they spent years reinventing themselves, recording under nearly 20 different names just to stay afloat. Tensions grew, and by 1959, Tommy pushed out key members, leaving the group unstable and directionless. Everything shifted in 1960 when Bob Gaudio entered the picture. Introduced through Joe Pesci, Gaudio saw potential where others saw failure. Soon after, Nick Massey joined, helping refine the group's vocal structure. When they failed an audition at a bowling alley lounge called the Four Seasons, they walked away without the job, but not without something else. Gaudio suggested they take the name anyway. In that moment, after years of struggle, reinvention, and hidden debt, they stopped being the Four Lovers and became the Four Seasons. The breakthrough, the success, and the cost. With their new name, the Four Seasons entered the early 1960s hoping for a breakthrough, but it didn't come right away. Their first single, Bermuda, 1961, went nowhere. They were still working regular jobs, cutting hair, working in print shops, and singing backup for producer Bob Crew. Crew believed in their voices, but not in them as stars, keeping them locked in the background while others took the spotlight. Everything changed in 1962. On September 15th, Bob Gaudio wrote Sherry in just 15 minutes while getting ready for rehearsal, holding the melody in his head the entire drive because he had no way to record it. The song, originally called Jackie Baby, didn't seem perfect at first, but the group kept it exactly as it was. When it was released, Sherry exploded to #1 for 5 weeks. Soon after, Big Girls Don't Cry followed, also topping the charts, proving this was no accident. Then came Walk Like a Man in 1963, another #1 hit that cemented their place in music history. Behind the success, Gaudio and Bob Crew became one of the most powerful songwriting teams of the era, creating a string of hits and even shaping Frankie's solo career. But success didn't bring stability. By the mid-1960s, tensions were already growing. Nick Massey left in 1965, worn down by touring, and by 1972, Gaudio stepped away from the road as personal and professional strains deepened. Eventually, Frankie Valli became the only original member still standing. While his career soared, his personal life followed a different path. He married Mary Mandel in 1957 at just 23, raising her young daughter Celia as his own before welcoming 2 more daughters, Antonia and Francine. Though the marriage ended in 1971, his bond with his children remained strong. But in 1980, tragedy struck. Celia died in an accident at just 26, and only 6 months later, Francine, who had begun following her father into music, died from an accidental overdose, worsened by illness. The back-to-back losses left a permanent mark. Frankie later admitted that losing a child is something you never truly recover from. The secret debt, the mob ties, and the silence he couldn't escape. Behind the success of the Four Seasons, a crisis had been quietly growing. Tommy DeVito had been hiding serious financial trouble for years. Gambling debts that reached around $160,000 with the mob, along with more than $500,000 in unpaid taxes. All of it remained hidden while the group sold over 100 million records. The others trusted him completely and had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. When the truth finally surfaced, it hit the band all at once. Their financial stability was suddenly at risk, and by 1970, Tommy stepped away from the group. But the danger didn't disappear with him. The size of the debt pulled them closer to Angelo "Gyp" DiCarlo, a powerful and feared figure in New Jersey's underworld. Their connection began after a mob-linked manager tried to claim control of the band, forcing them into a situation they never saw coming. DiCarlo stepped in to resolve it, offering protection, but that protection came with its own price. Over time, The group performed private shows for him, even traveling to a prison in 1972 to perform after he was incarcerated. When the full extent of Tommy's debts became clear, Frankie Valli and Bob Gaudio made a decision that defined everything that followed. They agreed to take on the entire burden, both the mob debt and the massive tax bill. It was a choice rooted in loyalty, but it came at a cost. Frankie pushed himself through years of relentless touring, determined to repay money that had never been his responsibility. At the same time, he faced a far more personal battle. In 1967, doctors diagnosed him with otosclerosis, a condition that gradually causes hearing loss. For a singer whose voice was everything, the news was devastating. Yet he continued performing for years, often unable to fully hear himself on stage. Ironically, it was during this period that he recorded one of the biggest songs of his life. Can't Take My Eyes Off You became a massive hit, climbing to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and staying on the charts for weeks. The song exploded after a radio program director played it on air, sparking overwhelming listener demand. Singing in silence and fighting to hear again. As the years passed, performing became more difficult for Frankie Valli. By the late 1960s and into the 1970s, he often stepped on stage unsure if he could hear the band at all. He relied on memory and instinct, singing songs he once mastered while barely hearing a thing. Engineers pushed the sound in his headphones to painful levels, yet the music still felt distant. The audience heard perfection, but for him, each performance felt isolating. Studio work grew just as challenging. He traveled across the country with Bob Gaudio, searching for answers, but doctor after doctor told him nothing could be done. It wasn't until they met Dr. Victor Goodhill in California that hope finally appeared. By then, Frankie had lost most of his hearing in one ear, yet he kept performing, driven by habit and determination. In 1980, everything changed. Dr. Goodhill performed a delicate surgery using replacement bones from the UCLA Bone Bank, restoring Frankie's hearing in one ear from 35% to nearly full. A second operation the following year brought his other ear back as well. After more than a decade of silence, sound returned, something Frankie later described as life-changing. At the same time, his personal life continued to shift. His first marriage had ended in 1971, and in 1974, he married Mary Ann Hannigan, who had supported him through some of his hardest years. That same year, his solo career surged again with My Eyes Adored You. After being rejected by multiple labels, the song was finally released and climbed to number 1 in 1975, becoming one of his biggest hits, a year of loss and a legacy that lived on. As time went on, Frankie Valli faced moments that would change him forever, and 1980 became the most devastating year of his life. In February, his daughter Celia died at 26 after falling from a fire escape in New York. The circumstances were never fully explained, leaving the family with questions that were never answered. The tragedy was so shocking that even the creators of Jersey Boys later admitted it felt too unreal to include in the story. Just 6 months later, the pain deepened. His daughter Francine, only 20, died from a mix of Quaaludes and alcohol while already battling pneumonia. She had been preparing to follow her father into music, showing real promise and even performing publicly not long before her death. Losing 2 daughters in the same year left a wound that never truly healed. Francine's loss carried an added weight. She was the only one of his children who had seriously pursued music. Those who heard her believed she had inherited her father's voice and potential. What she might have become was a question that would remain unanswered. During this time, Frankie's personal life was also in transition. He had divorced his first wife, Mary Mandel, in 1971, remarried in 1974, and would divorce again in 1982. Years later, he married Randy Clohessy, with whom he had 3 sons, in a relationship that lasted 2 decades. Mary Mandel, who shared the pain of losing both daughters, passed away in 2007. Years later, the story of the Four Seasons found new life on stage. Jersey Boys premiered in 2004 and quickly built momentum. After an unexpected casting change, John Lloyd Young stepped into the role of Frankie Valli and delivered a breakthrough performance. When the show opened on Broadway in 2005, it became an instant success, winning 4 Tony Awards in 2006, including Best Musical. The success went far beyond the stage. What began as a $7.8 million production quickly turned into a global phenomenon, earning back its investment within months and eventually grossing over $2 billion worldwide. A second fortune and the final spotlight. As Jersey Boys grew into a global success, Frankie Valli's life changed in ways he never expected. The musical brought him more financial success than his entire singing career. He and Bob Gaudio secured a share of the profits, and by 2014, Frankie was earning around $245,000 a month from the Broadway production alone. The show ran from 2005 to 2017, with over 4,600 performances, becoming one of the longest-running productions in Broadway history and touring across the world. With success came legal challenges. Frankie, Gaudio, and the creative team were sued over claims that parts of the story had been taken from an unpublished autobiography. The case dragged on for years. Although a jury initially ruled against them in 2016, the decision was later overturned, with the court declaring the material fell under fair use. By 2020, the ruling was upheld, officially closing the case. In his later years, Frankie's personal life also took new turns. In 2023, at 89, he married Jackie Jacobs in a private Las Vegas ceremony. The moment felt symbolic. He even sang along to "Can't Take My Eyes Off You" during the wedding. Around the same time, he prepared for a new residency, showing that even in his late 80s, he wasn't ready to step away. By 2024, he was the only original member of the Four Seasons still performing. While the group had been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame decades earlier, Frankie continued carrying the legacy alone. But with that came growing concern. Viral videos began circulating online, showing him struggling during performances, missing lyrics, and appearing tired on stage. The reaction was immediate. Some fans worried about his health, while others questioned whether he should still be performing at all. Rumors spread quickly, with one viral post even calling it elder abuse. Frankie responded directly, making it clear that no one was forcing him to perform. He said he remained on stage by choice, because he still loved it. His team echoed the same message, insisting he was happy and that audiences continued to show up, just as they always had.